Welcome to patch 10.05, and you know what? Almost faster than ever before, Blizzard have actually rolled out a pretty major list of class changes. We've got talent revamps and buffs all over the place, with only a small number of nerfs, so mostly everyone should be happy enough. Today I'll be doing what we usually do, tell you who won, who lost, who sort of just shrugs it off and goes on with their day. We're also hitting that point where you're bound to be close to finishing your goals in your main, so maybe, just maybe, it's time to think about what alt is on the horizon. Unless perhaps you're thinking about Ret Paladin, but even with them, there is some pretty interesting news. Also, strap in, because Blizzard were onto something pretty damn good when these changes were made, and if this energy is what we get going forward, then yeah, I'm kind of here for it. I mean, as I record this, 10.0.7 is headed to the PTR. Also, a shout out to the artists on our game team. We've got a massive loot drop for January over on our Patreon. Here's some of it. We've got the first pocket notebook that we've done. We've got a gorgeous new style of pin, which I absolutely love, plus art from a game project that we're building, a gorgeous fantasy-inspired bestiary, and all the digital rewards that are there too. We've got a lot going on, and February is going to be absolutely massive. Drop a comment if you know why. I know a few of you do. Otherwise, though, hit up the link down below if you're interested in some loot, and let's roll. The winners then. Okay, Brewmaster is the most obvious win here. If you look at the patch notes, that's because there are lots of 10 to 25% buffs. In reality, though, it is Blizzard trying to salvage them from being the least loved tank in the game right now. According to the experts, it results in about a 2% single target buff and 2% AoE nerf. That Resonant Fists nerf really stings. However, it does shift a bit more power to playing well versus passive damage, which is always fair. Now, the talent changes are fun. It gives them a bit more freedom overall. With 4 talents being dropped down to only having 1 rank, they basically have a few more points to put where they want, which mostly lets them take more self-healing, especially with Stagger going baseline and the new Healing Sphere Generator talent being so good it's non-negotiable. Brews should feel just a little bit more like they can actually handle themselves. Though it doesn't do anything to shore up their weaknesses beyond that. It is a mild winner, but a winner nonetheless. And as usual for monks, all they need is a head start to put their high skill caps and class dedication to good use. A great idea for a tank alt if you are looking for something cool and new to dig your teeth into. Mistweaver is actually also a comfy winner too, but then again, it's also just Blizzard trying to get more people to play them. Even Resto Shamans, who have been not in the best space, they actually get played 50% more, according to Raider.io. As for the changes, the TLDR is a lot of quality of life improvements to spell interactions and some small mana cost reductions. Those do most of the balance work, but the new talents are what makes this feel like a rather loving change. They generate mist clouds in combat every few seconds, and they can draw those in with a button to heal allies. However, another talent gives them a buff with the duration based on how many clouds they draw in. So there's a lot of mini-gaming possible to kind of juggle some pretty hefty buffs with this system. Another good spec then to consider if you want a healing alt that plays a bit differently, that has plenty of depth. Really, in the words of the Mistweaver Discord, things are looking up, Mistweaver butts. Okay, Balanced Druids. You've got a hell of a glow up. Another redesign for a spec that has struggled to find its feet. Lunar Eclipse increases the AoE Starfire damage instead of its crit chance, and Astral Communication now gives extra max astral power, therefore theoretically allowing you to bank 3 Star Surges again. Though it's now ignored. Solar Beam is now non-negotiable, which is awesome unless you liked having an excuse. Circle of Life and Death is now Cosmic Rapidity, which increases dot damage, but without needing to redot more often, which is a pretty nice quality of life thing. Big changes with the talent builds across the board then, because of the new tree, resulting in some switching up that is generally seen as a positive, though there are some weaker abilities on the outside of the tree that are rarely picked up unless maybe a niche calls for it, like say Wild Mushroom. In general, freedom is kind of wild, but it's big wins. Finally, you no longer Stellar Flare in AoE after 7+ targets, and you switch to Starfire on 2+ targets instead of needing 4. So basically, design goals have finally been achieved, which is a good thing. Resto Druids are tiny winners because they've got 2 new talents that improve their single target and spot healing, which was pretty much their only weakness anyway. Now, this is via making Nourish a lot better, hot extensions, and then faster and stronger when weaved with regrowth. Okay, Arms Warrior then. Good news for you. You go hard now with some crazy energy. Alright, there are lots of small to medium-sized buffs and a little bit more build freedom, including sweeping strikes now baseline. This has enabled builds that players have already been using to great success. There's also a bit of insanity going on where, since they now have Ignore Pain, pressing it is a DPS gain versus Whirlwind and Slam because it's not on the GCD, and they actually benefit from dumping the Rage fast enough. Isn't that mad? So if you want a class that got buffs, is doing pretty well anyway, and now has certified cursed tech that you can shitpost about in Discord, Arms is a pretty damn good shout. Fury then actually did get some pretty nice buffs, which opened up builds, but nothing worth going too in-depth about. The auto-attack heavy Annihilator builds should be a bit more competitive now if you want that sort of vibe. Then next, and close to my heart because it is my main, Discipline Priest is a big winner. Now, to actually explain the changes and their impact would take like 10 minutes. So, I'm going to boil it down to quoting a witty remark that I saw on the class Discord. When asked what their thoughts on the changes were, a player simply replied, "We can heal now. That's good." Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the site's sub-creation, which just takes, like, participation statistics from high-level content, oh boy, N was very, very small for Disc. Seriously though, for this, the Shadow Covenant buffs improve our burst windows, Mind Blast is way stronger, the passive Leech instead of Vampiric Embrace gives us a ton of free healing, Powered Radiance is better than before, and the only sacrifice we have to make is the other buttons being too good for us to use Powered Shield as much anymore, which, I mean, does admittedly feel a bit funny, but yeah, overall, man, I'm excited for this one. Okay, Preservation Evoker, you get some nice quality of life wins, with the Temporal Anomaly Orb now operating a bit more like Mage Orbs than a weird, not quite placed AoE that was unreliable, and a few other things, like Nosdormu's Teachings giving more Empower spells, and Echo no longer being mistakenly consumed. So, all good. Now, based on the earlier patch notes, you might have expected Guardian Druid to be in here as one of the winners. It would make sense. It got a long overdue talent revamp, it got buffs, and new talents. Yeah, so, issues have happened. Let's talk about the losers then. Light a candle for Matt, who was really excited to have more fun with Guardian. But, yeah, well, with this revamp, there's actually been an unintentional nerf, and it's kind of jammed the spec full of brutal bugs, and it didn't even fix existing ones. There hasn't been communication on bug fixes or ETAs as of the time of recording anyway. The patch basically just got sent live full of crazy stuff, like the new Maul replacement, Raze, not benefiting from Guardian Aura, which includes a 50% buff, tier, 2 talents, also that should buff it. So that's quite bad. Also, a key bit of damage mitigation doesn't apply as it should. So ultimately, right, this theoretically is a better tree, but it's not played out that way because the new talents are either broken or undertuned, and it's hard to, I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard to even care when when like diagnosed bugs, like community diagnosed bugs are just let go live and stay live. It's quite unfortunate. This is causing damage and survivability nerfs on top of existing issues. And also, the new Lunar Beam ability was actually even bugged in PTR. Under some conditions, it would heal mobs and damage the player. That's fun. Thorns of Iron, one of their new solves to their damage survivability trade-off, is too weak to put a point into. And also, Incarnation got nerfed via extra Mangle and Thrash cooldown duration for apparently no reason. The spec honestly does deserve to be better because this was supposed to be a big buff and improvement, but actually it was a slight nerf and a quality of life downgrade instead. I imagine it'll be quite quick to fix this up, but seemingly right now, it's not the pick. Hey, it could be better in a week, it could be better in 2 weeks for all we know, but as the patch went live, that's how things are. Our second loser then is Prot Warrior, but honestly, that is a loser with a humongous asterisk because these nerfs are so light, it's unbelievable. You guys were kind of like undisputed champions of tanks early on, so getting off like this does kind of feel like you've dodged a bullet. I mean, who knows, a less kind Blizzard would maybe have taken away Ignore Pain entirely and claimed you were just using an overpowered, better version of Stagger from Brewmaster. Yeah, no, look, lucky you, still insanely strong, light nerfs, don't worry. Our third loser, though, is a bit of a loss for some. It's the Marksmanship Hunter, which, well, doesn't have double tap anymore. Double tap is gone. It's been replaced with a new talent that is really quite boring. Though, it should have access to True Shot a lot more often thanks to a True Shot buff, and Salvo is now a button to press before you volley or multi-shot so that you can control when you want more AoE burst. It might deserve a loser spot though, because to use the words of our guild's Marksmanship Hunter, they've gimped the Hunter tree in such a way that removes potential flex points. Our third loser then is Ret Paladin, because you didn't get anything. And I know we're kind of being mean, and yes, you guys have been promised a very close look. Basically, in some hotfixes, Blizzard said, hey, right, we're looking at Ret. So that does make me hope that we will get a decent-sized rework in 10.0.7, which just hit PTR, or perhaps 10.1, which will follow 10.0.7. But hey, I mean, it wouldn't be... how could we not, like, use one of these last opportunities to meme up Ret Paladins for a while? And don't worry, I mean... it was an ex-Ret main that typed through this section with gritted teeth and red eyes. So, good for him. The next pack are ones with changes that didn't really impact them much, either because they are mixed changes or just very minor, but they're things we think you should know about. Okay, the most mixed is actually Feral Druid, and this is because they actually rolled back most of their planned changes due to feedback. The only change is a slight shuffle of talents to kill the no defensives build for crazy people, and a slightly better tree. But there may be some unintended, or at least not communicated outcomes here. Essentially, it looks like the math is coming in such that Blood Talons is now not worth taking except slightly in AoE, because the passive Lion Strength is actually winning in single target. And now you can also avoid Brutal Slash. Now it's been kind of interesting. I've been watching Matt when we've been raiding in Heroic, really enjoying Feral, even once he got used to Blood Talons and got it in his muscle memory and was using it in reclears. But even with that, I think he and many others would often prefer using the more passive option when progressing in a hard fight because, your brain's kind of going elsewhere learning mechanics. So I guess your opinion might vary in this because it was intentionally an okay layer of skill ceiling. But if you were scared off, because of Blood Talons, then maybe it is time to embrace your wild side because single target is now aggressively easy to play in an optimal fashion. And also, using Rake from Stealth, a core feature of the spec, has been crashing some people's games. I don't think that's an intended feature, and I hope it gets fixed pretty soon. Rogues then actually do get a few nice changes, with Feint going baseline and now getting a new talent that reduces the duration of slows. There's also an AoE Shiv talent for Assassination, and a slight talent reshuffle that just makes more sense. Sepsis now giving an instant stealth ability as well, as the usual one is pretty nice, especially for sub, and Outlaw, got a deserved nerf to Fan the Hammer and their survivability. Avlock and Destrolock got some nice buffs, but the general vibe here is, that it's just not enough to contend with Demonology. Now, the new Affliction talent pushes 6% more single target damage, and the redesign of Soul Swap to copy existing buffs instead of the boring version that just applied fresh copies is nice theoretically, but the way that it ignores some outlier dots like Singularity and Soul Rot and has a buggy 30-second cooldown just kind of makes it weird and irrelevant. Now, the Destro buffs are nice, but they are minor, and the class capstone revamps are seen as being a bit weird too. More damage, more impactful, but by so little that it doesn't feel like there's a massive reason for them to exist. Holy Paladin then does get a minor win as well, with their Blessing moving to a mana restore instead of being overcomplicated, though I'm sure some will miss it. An Avenging Crusader redesign to make it more of a regular button, but at a cost, though that is a bit of a trade-off more than a buff. Tower of Radiance getting a chance to grant Holy Power on non-beacon targets is a pretty key change in how they play, without resorting to melee or wasting healing in beacon targets. So, yeah, I mean, their issues genuinely are being worked on, slowly but surely, by Blizzard. It's just the opposite of the Ret situation, you know? No news for Ret is good news eventually because they've said they're looking at stuff, but slightly good news now for Holy implies that maybe they won't get their mastery kind of changed soon, which I know a lot of people do want. Tough luck, but I guess if you're looking at our own guild, our resident Holy Paladin is actually pretty chuffed with the changes, though he just wishes they could get a real solve to mana issues. Okay, let's move on to Frost, my old main, and Fire Mages, who just get a 5% buff, so maybe that'll help. I mean, it's a win, but you're still kind of losing in general, so I'm going to say mixed. I really do think that Blizzard should have either maybe tried to a little bit more aggressively rein in Arcane's dominance, or just buff those two up just a smidge more, perhaps. Restoration and Elemental Shaman are actually tiny winners too, with some flat buffs to their output. Nothing major, but probably not enough to let them feel valued, instead of, enhancement being the only shaman anyone sees. Okay, that's basically it for 10.05. If you weren't mentioned, it's likely because your class saw literally no changes, or the changes that were there are basically quite minor and aren't really worth discussing. And hey, if that pisses you off, maybe you're a Rat Paladin or a Shadow Priest. Certainly, speaking as, partially Shadow myself, maybe we should be worried. There are some things that people would like to be fixed up, but as for the Rat Paladins, don't worry, you are actually being looked at. As always though, do check in with your class discords. Things evolve over time. You can see if they're doing any crazy new math, like how today Matt discovered that with his own bloody spec, and, the whole Blood Talents thing, and the crazy tech for our Guild's Arms Warrior. So who knows, maybe we will kill the Egg Lady earlier on in our next raid night, now that a few of us have seen buffs. Anyway, thanks for watching. Tell me what class you're perhaps inspired to pick up, or what you're doing now. And hey, if you want to get some dope-ass journals, some cool loot, also support the show, you can check out that Patreon link down below. Anyway, that's it from me. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the patch. I'll see you next time.